late Cuban leader Fidel Castro's ashes have begun a coast-to-coast journey on the island nation in mourning. 71 are dead after a plane crash in Medellin yesterday afternoon.
Will not be swayed.
The Trudeau government has approved the construction of 2 pipelines that will help connect the Alberta oil sands to the global markets. Hi, and welcome to Humber News. I'm Ariana Moore Dallas Reyes, coming to you from our newsroom here in Humber College North Campus. A casket containing the remains of revolutionary leader Fidel Castro is being transported across Cuba. The cortege slowly set off from the city's Revolution Square this morning and is making the 900-kilometer trip to his final resting place in the city of Santiago. Millions of Cubans have been gathering and marching through the streets during the 9-day official mourning period. The former leader died on the Friday at the age of 90. Castro ruled over Cuba for 49 years, and he stepped down 10 years ago because of poor health and handed the reins of power to his brother Raul. Castro was admired as a revolutionary champion of the poor, but was also vilified as a dictator who oppressed Cubans and ruined the economy. Castro's ashes will be buried in Santiago on Sunday. Officials investigating yesterday's Colombian plane crash say that the airliner carrying the Brazilian soccer team may have run out of fuel. Investigators are currently at the crash site and recovered the plane's black boxes as well as several bodies. The crash killed more than 70 people, including all but 3 members of the Brazilian soccer team. 2 crew members and 1 journalist also survived. Investigators say the plane may have run out of fuel and crashed into the mountainside. Fans of the Brazilian soccer team remembered the players last night by chanting their names and waving lights. Brazil's president has declared 3 days of national mourning. The Royal Canadian Air Force is investigating the crash of a CF-18 fighter jet. Captain Thomas McQueen was killed when the jet went down on Monday in Cold Lake, Alberta. McQueen was a veteran of the Royal Canadian Air Force for 10 years and was engaged. The 29-year-old is the latest fatality in the aging CF-18 Hornets.
Air Force are on scene, and they're going to allow them the space to be able to do the work to find out what has happened.
19 Hornets have crashed since Canada has acquired the fleet in 1982. The jet came from 4-Wing Cold Lake, which is the busiest fighter base in Canada. There have been 12 crashes, which have resulted in 9 fatalities from the Alberta base. The Liberal government is currently looking at ways to replace and prolong the life of the planes. People on the East Coast are digging out after being hit with the first huge blizzard of the season. 44,000 people in New Brunswick and almost 4,000 in Nova Scotia are without power. PEI is working to restore electricity to almost 11,000 residents and have canceled the Northumberland Strait ferries until further notice. Schools and flights were canceled in the provinces, and people were urged to stay off the roads. The worst hit areas were Moncton and Sunbury County. Demonstrators are protesting against the federal government's approval of 2 major pipelines that will carry nearly 1 million more barrels of oil a day. Enbridge's Line 3 and Kinder Morgan's Trans Mountain pipelines were approved, but Enbridge's Northern Gateway project was rejected. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau say the moves are in the best interest of Canadians and the major win for workers, their families, and struggling Alberta economy.
This is a decision based on rigorous debate, on science, and on evidence. We have not been and will not be swayed by political arguments.
The Prime Minister says the new pipeline will triple Canada's capacity to get resources to international markets. However, many First Nations groups are protesting against the decision. Last weekend, thousands gathered in Vancouver, including First Nations leaders, environmental activists, and politicians, including Green Party leader Elizabeth May. Kinder Morgan says it's Indigenous support for the project, but only from 1/3 of the groups it's consulted. Despite the protests, Trudeau says Canada is still a climate leader, pointing to Alberta's plan to cap oil patch greenhouse gas emissions. Reactions to the news of the pipeline decision has been mixed, but what's clear is that there will be environmental repercussions. Our reporter Brittany Billette has this to report.
Environmentalists and First Nations have vowed to stop the recently approved pipelines. Line 3 is the largest project in Enbridge's history and will double the volume of the existing infrastructure. The old pipeline is known for leaking. The new Trans Mountain pipeline will triple the capacity of barrels moved into BC and will end on the edge of the Great Bear Rainforest. This is a huge concern for environmentalists. In an interview with Reuters on November 19th, Yarrow Eco Village co-founder Michael Hale had this to say.
We will stop this pipeline, make no mistake about it. It's not in our interest, it's not in Canada's interest. And they can arrest me, they can take me away, I'll come back, I'll do it all over again.
Humber's energy efficiency manager from the Office of Sustainability says pipeline projects are always risky.
You know, the people that are building them will always tell you, they're doing everything they can. Safety is of utmost concern, but the reality is leaks do happen, and it's the local communities that suffer.
Trudeau says expanding Canada's oil resources will help transition to clean energy in the future. The total approved cost of the two pipelines is $14.3 billion. Brittany Billette, Humber News.
Overseas now, tens of thousands of Syrians are escaping Aleppo as pro-government forces advance into the eastern part of the city. About 275,000 people are still trapped in the rebel-occupied eastern districts. The UN says that it distributed the last of its food rations on November 13th. The area also has no functioning hospital. UNICEF has reported 100,000 children are trapped in the region.
Deliberately deprived of food and medical care, many of them, including small children, report that they are simply waiting for death. A nightmare which clearly violates the most basic norms of human rights and any shred of human decency.
As of November 28, pro-government forces have taken back about 40% of the war-torn city and are in complete control of the northeastern Aleppo. The fighting has intensified in the region after the army began a new offensive last week. The area has been under intensive bombardment since the summer. Meanwhile, in Iraq's besieged city of Mosul is experiencing a shortage of food and water, electricity, forcing civilians from the city. According to the UN, up to 500,000 people in Mosul are without drinking water. There is already a shortage of food and electricity. More than 1 million people are still in the city. Iraqi forces have been fighting to eliminate the militant group ISIS from the country. Mosul is the last stronghold for a group in Iraq. President-elect Donald Trump has made another appointment to his team. Steven Mnuchin will be the leader of the U.S. Treasury. Mnuchin was in Trump Tower in New York to accept the nomination to the cabinet. He spent 17 years at Goldman Sachs and most recently gained experience as the financial chair of Trump's presidential campaign. He will be working with Wilbur Ross, Trump's nominee for Secretary of Commerce, to formulate and execute a sound economic plan.
And our number one priority is going to be the economy, get back to 3 to 4% growth. We believe that's very sustainable, and focus on things for the American worker. That's absolutely our priority.
Meanwhile, Mitt Romney is the next big name that could wind up in Trump's cabinet. Trump met with Romney for dinner last night. He appears to be the frontrunner for Secretary of State. Back at home, cracked highways and long hospital wait times are the highlight from the Ontario Auditor General's annual report. Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk says substantial asphalt has been used to repair major highways, only to lead to expensive patch-ups just a few years later. The report also comes down hard on hospital emergency rooms. They've seen a 21% increase in mental health cases over the past 5 years, without any standards for admission, treatment, and discharge of patients. Lysyk also says patients are waiting an average of 37 hours in emergency wards for beds and 23 hours to get into the intensive care. She also warned that the cap and trade program won't come close to meeting its 2020 target of reducing emission and will actually benefit California more than Ontario. Ontario's youngest MPP in history has been sworn in at Queen's Park. Sam Oosterhoff was elected as Conservative last week in a by-election in Niagara West Glanbrook. The 19-year-old is already in some hot water after saying he would not have supported Bill 28, which is the legislation on gay rights that passed a day before arrival as MPP. Because he wasn't sworn in until today, Oosterhoff didn't vote on the bill. Oosterhoff's social views caused controversy during the election campaign. Liberals' Nathalie Desrosiers was also sworn in this morning for Ottawa-Vanier. The City of Toronto and 2 local health providers are asking for federal permission to operate supervised injection sites in Toronto. According to the city officials, there would be 3 injection sites. Approving the sites would allow users to bring their own illegal drugs and inject them in a safe environment while being supervised by a healthcare professional. Toronto Mayor John Tory is one of the people who support the proposal.
Saved the needless loss of life, and we will have made sure people aren't taking drugs in alleyways and in washrooms.
But not every.
A recent city report showed that overdose rates in Toronto have increased by over 70% from 2004 to 2014. These injection sites would be the first in Ontario and the 3rd in Canada. With the holiday coming, you might be starting to think about what to get everyone on your list. Believe it or not, the TTC can help. Natalie Dixon has the story.
A violent interaction or a fair hike. You can count on TTC stories daily. Finally, they introduced something people might be happy to hear about. You can find your stop on a mug or a shirt on the new TTC online shop that launched this week. TTC spokesperson says the transit-themed merchandise website has already seen plenty of traffic. He says the most popular item is the subway font mugs. Some Humber College students say TTC merchandise enhances the sense of community in Toronto.
It brings everybody together, repping the city, trying to, advertise in a sense, get people, on the wave.
It's making it more like homey. The 6 is more just, it's more to come together, it's more diverse now, so it's just adding to it.
Others are skeptical.
I feel like it would probably be more of a promotion kind of thing to get people to probably buy or use public transportation rather than drive in, so that way we reduce on our effects maybe in climate change.
Although this is a new launch for the TTC, Spacing Magazine has been doing it for 12 years now. Matthew Blackett is the publisher and creative director of Spacing and a graduate of the journalism program at Humber. He says TTC products have always sold well, and in fact, Spacing is planning to expand its line. Their most popular items are the traffic buttons and magnets, selling 750,000 as of today. If you want to get your hands on some TTC merchandise, you can head to ttcshop.ca. You can pick up all kinds of things from posters to even a shower curtain. Natalie Dixon, Humber News.
As Humber students are beginning to prep for exam season, many are realizing lack of sleep is taking a toll on their everyday lives. Linda Huynh has the story.
Hitting that snooze button may not always be a bad option. According to a UK-based study which revealed Canada is the 3rd most sleep-deprived country.
You just have to be a point for everything, right? Just going day-to-day things. If you're not prepared, if you don't have enough sleep every day, you're not going to get yourself done.
As the semester comes to an end, students are cramming every last minute to brush up on their notes for their finals. Lack of sleep and high levels of caffeine are proven to decrease concentration levels.
I think it's because maybe not a lot of people like to sleep at night. Maybe some are more night owls and they get more sleep during the day.
Humber has many resources available to students, from sleep lounges to various coffee shops. Students find themselves filling up a cup every morning to prepare themselves for the day.
It would just affect my grades because I wouldn't be able to get the work done. I wouldn't be paying attention.
Lack of sleep can have serious effects on your body. The study concludes that the less you sleep, the lower your productivity level and the higher your mortality risk. So with exams crashing in, it might be a good time to catch some extra Z's. Linda Huynh, Humber News.
Well, nothing helps bring a community together quite like food. The CICE Student Council knows just that and are hosting a samosa sale in the Student Center. Corey Martinez has more.
The CICE Student Council are hosting a samosa day in the Student Center. For only $1, students can help fund a trip for the CICE Student Council. The CICE, or Community Integration Through Cooperative Education Program, has spent the last 30 years giving students with learning disabilities a chance to experience college life.
Money for water.
And I'm handing out flyers.
I'm in charge of the music.
Rosanna Toe says events such as Samosa Day helps their students become an active part of the community.
When we see them doing things like this, when they're getting involved in our CIC student council, so they're able to give back to the community, I think it's a great way for them to learn and then to understand that, and we're hoping that it'll carry on afterwards they graduate.
Broadcast radio and television student Jordana Bain says that events like these help students connect with one another.
Like we have to we call them by their first names, but they're still teaching us, and it still feels like this, like they're one step above. But if it's there's other students, it's we can relate to each other, it's easier.
Corey Martinez, Humber News.
Today marks the beginning of the end of a 20-year mission for a NASA spacecraft. Cassini left the Earth in 1997 on a mission to study Saturn and the planet's most famous rings. The spacecraft will be grazing the innermost rings at a distance of a mere 48 kilometers. It's the closest any spacecraft has ever been to the elusive planet. Cassini's antennae will be used as an umbrella to protect the spacecraft from the ice and the rocks that make up the ring. It will orbit through the rings 22 times before it deliberately burns up in the planet's atmosphere. Back on Earth, one of Mexico's volcanoes is rumbling back to life. It erupted yesterday in an unusually strong explosion, sending the smoke and ash into the air. The volcano has been active since pre-Colombian times. It's North America's second highest volcano. It has been erupting since 2005. And when we come back, we'll tell you what's happening in the world of sports, and Aloin Navarro-Fanoy will have your 3-day forecast.
It looks like we're going to have a wet week as we finish off November and roll into the holiday season. I'll have your weather update coming up after the break.
But first, Belgians have another occasion to raise their glass to. Belgian beer have been added to the UNESCO list of traditions worth protecting. There is almost 2,000 different beers in Belgium and over 200 breweries. National dishes include beer, and the country has about 30 brewing museums. Beer culture becomes Belgium's 13th item on the list on the UN's Heritage Agency. It joins horse-drawn shrimp fishing and a carnival celebration.